A newborn baby died at the Milwaukee County Jail in July, and the baby's mother, a former inmate, is suing, saying the jail staff ignored her request for help. The 30-year-old woman, who was almost 9 months pregnant, is seeking $8.5 million in damages. According to the Journal-Sentinel, her lawyer wrote in the notice of claims that she told a corrections officer her water broke and she was going into labor. The officer laughed and ignored her. The inmate said she told the officer she was going to labor around midnight, gave birth around 4 a.m., and finally received attention from officers at 6 a.m. Her child was pronounced dead later that day. That former inmate's claim is against the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, which has since issued a statement saying she did not inform jail staff she was going into labor and the baby was stillborn. The inmate disputes both points. Now, that sheriff's office is run by Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke. He may be familiar to you from frequent Fox News appearances, his turn as a speaker at the Republican National Convention, and even as a speaker at Trump rallies. Sheriff Clarke also made an appearance at Trump Tower yesterday, where he met with the president-elect and is reportedly under consideration for a cabinet position, possibly as head of the Department of Homeland Security. A spokeswoman from Sheriff Clarke said their office would have no further comment on the newborn's death, but that is not the only death that has occurred in the jail system that Mr. Clarke runs. Another inmate's death, Terrell Thomas, on April 24th, has been ruled a homicide caused by profound dehydration, according to the Milwaukee County Medical Examiner. According to the Journal-Sentinel, other inmates heard Thomas beg for water in the days before he died. Clarke's office said it would not be commenting on the case until all investigations and possible lawsuits have ended. Journal-Sentinel reports 2 other inmates have died at Milwaukee County Jail since April. A 38-year-old female inmate died in August, and a 29-year-old male inmate died in late October. No information has been released about the causes of death or circumstances surrounding those 2 cases. Since Clarke is under consideration to run part of the federal government, we thought we'd talk to someone who knows his record well. And joining me now, Wisconsin State Representative Mandela Barnes, representing Milwaukee. And Representative Barnes, what is your assessment of Mr. Clarke's performance in his role as the sheriff from Milwaukee County, as opposed to his role as sort of provocateur and talking head?
Well, that's about all he is a provocateur and talking head. He showed nothing but a culture of mismanagement as his time as Milwaukee County Sheriff, conveniently putting his political ambitions above the needs of the people of Milwaukee County. He had so much audacity even to neglect to protect President Barack Obama when he was in Milwaukee a few years back. Yet he's parading around with Donald Trump, made sure he made it to the Republican National Convention, and he does more political speeches and political travel than he does actually work as sheriff of Milwaukee County. There's been 4 deaths in 4 months. He's already been on the hook for over $400,000 in lawsuits, and we're looking at potentially millions more after these 4 deaths, after this is settled.
I'm curious how, obviously we're quoting Journal-Sentinel reporting, and I have sources and friends in Milwaukee who I've talked to a bit about his reputation there. How much this is an issue, is a scandal there? I mean, obviously they deny that the charges of the woman who's suing, but a newborn dead in a jail is no small thing.
Right, and so this is Sheriff Clarke not performing his duties. This is his staff under his supervision. Imagine if he's the head of Homeland Security, what kind of trouble that spells for people across the entire United States. It should be very frightening for a lot of people who only hear Sheriff David Clarke, but don't actually know Sheriff David Clarke's actions.
Yeah, we should make the point the Department of Homeland Security, of course, is the entity that runs huge facilities that detain and incarcerate thousands, hundreds of thousands at times, immigrants, sometimes families. There's been huge abuses. A lot of that's privatized, even under the Obama administration. Human rights groups have raised concerns. That would be one of the main duties of Sheriff Clarke were he to take that position.
Yeah, and one thing that a lot of people can identify with is travel, and you got to think about the TSA, how frustrating travel already is. Imagine if a Sheriff David Clarke gets into that post, what we'll be facing as average Americans.
Does he have a future in Milwaukee County politics or in Wisconsin politics, or has he become a kind of national figure? He really, I mean, for someone who has a job, it is rare to see a public official spend as much time on cable news as he does.
Well, he's made his career deceiving the voting public in Milwaukee County. He runs as a Democrat. We know he's not a Democrat. And it's very unfortunate for the person who goes to the ballot and just sees Democrat and checks Democrat, or even people who see a black figure and assume that he has black interests at heart and support him, because that's what's been happening over the past, or over the several years, over the past few elections. I don't believe that he has a future in Milwaukee County at this point, simply because his head is swollen so big. His platform has become that much greater with the conservative right. He's their darling now. He's their guy. He hasn't been Milwaukee County's guy for a long time, and I'm glad someone else can take ownership of him.
He has said a lot of very controversial things. He's talked about our institutions of government and big media are corrupt. All we do is bitch, pitchforks, and torches time. He also said before long,
he incited a riot.
Yeah, he said Black Lives Matter will join forces with ISIS to bring down our legally constituted republic. You heard it here first. This is someone who, oversees a law enforcement agency, presumably, that has to provide security at protests and so forth.
Yeah, so someone should have to assume what his role as Homeland Security Director would be.
That's right.
With peaceful protesters who could potentially be detained, who could be potentially stripped of all of their rights. He's not a person who even abides by the Constitution. He's not a person who I consider to be a serious law enforcement professional. Again, he is a provocateur. He is a right-wing talking head, and it stops there.
All right, Mandela Barnes, State Representative, thank you very much. Appreciate it.